Let me ask you something. If someone handed you $5,000 right now, what would you actually do with it? Most people would say, I'd invest it. And then they'd open their phone, download some app, stare at a list of stocks they don't understand, and then close the app. Because here's the thing nobody tells you. Knowing that you should invest is easy. Knowing how, without losing your mind or your money, that's the part people avoid. And today, we're not avoiding it. We're going to walk through this calmly, logically, together. Let's start with Priya. Priya is 27. She lives in Toronto, Canada. She works in marketing. After taxes, she takes home around $3,800 a month. Her rent is $1,600, groceries, transit, phone, another $600, student loan, $280, a few subscriptions, eating out occasionally, $300. So, at the end of the month, she has maybe $800 left, sometimes less. Now, Priya is not irresponsible. She's not buying designer bags or booking holidays every weekend. She's just living the way most people her age live. But here's where the story gets interesting. Priya has had that $800 buffer sitting in a savings account for almost 2 years. She keeps meaning to invest it. She's watched videos, she's read articles, she even made a brokerage account once. But every time she gets close, she freezes. What if I lose it all? What if the market crashes next week? I don't understand enough yet. And so the money just sits there, earning 0.5% interest in a savings account, while inflation quietly eats through it at 3% a year. Sound familiar?
Here's what's actually happening to Priya's money. She has $800 saved every month. Over 2 years, that's roughly $19,000 sitting in that savings account. Her bank gives her 0.5% interest. After 2 years, she's earned maybe $95 in interest. $95 in 2 years. Meanwhile, inflation has been running at around 3%, which means the actual purchasing power of that $19,000 has quietly dropped by roughly $1,140. She didn't spend it. She didn't lose it in some bad decision. She just left it alone, and the system took a small piece of it anyway. This is what people don't see. Doing nothing with your money is still a financial decision. It's just a passive one. And passive decisions, compounded over years, are often the most expensive ones. Now here's the part I want you to understand. This is not about blaming Priya. The fear she feels is completely rational. The stock market can go down. People have lost money. We've all heard horror stories. But here's what gets left out of those stories. How you invest matters far more than whether you invest. Let's take a step back. What actually is the stock market? At its core, it's a marketplace where you can buy small pieces of companies. When a company like Apple or Unilever or a Philippine conglomerate like SM grows its business, earns more profit, the value of those small pieces tends to rise. That's it. That's the basic idea. Now, you don't need to pick individual companies. In fact, for most people, you probably shouldn't. Because here's the truth. Even professional fund managers, people with MBAs, Bloomberg terminals, and teams of analysts, most of them fail to consistently beat the overall market. Studies have shown this repeatedly. So if the experts can't reliably pick winning stocks, what chance does the average person have? Not great odds. And this is where something called an index fund becomes relevant. An index fund doesn't try to pick winners. It simply owns a little bit of everything. For example, the S&P 500 index fund owns tiny pieces of the 500 largest companies in America: Microsoft, Amazon, Johnson & Johnson, Visa, all in one fund. When you invest in that fund, you're not betting on one company. You're betting that the American economy, or the global economy continues to grow over the next 20, 30, 40 years. That's a very different kind of bet. And historically, the S&P 500 has returned an average of around 10% per year over the long run. Not every year, some years it drops, but on average, over decades, that number holds.
Let's go back to Priya. Let's say she decides to invest just $400 a month. Not all of her savings, half. She puts it into a simple index fund. She earns an average of 8% per year. After 10 years, she hasn't just saved $48,000. With compound growth, she's sitting on roughly $73,000. After 20 years, over $235,000. After 30 years, nearly $600,000. From $400 a month. Not because she was a genius, not because she picked the right stock at the right time, just because she started and she stayed consistent. Now compare that to the savings account. Same $400 a month, same 30 years, at 0.5% interest. She ends up with around $148,000. The difference between those two numbers is nearly $450,000. $450,000. That is the cost of waiting. That is the cost of fear. That is the cost of not knowing. And I want you to feel that number for a moment. Not to scare you, but to help you understand time is the most valuable ingredient in investing. Not market timing, not stock picking, not having a lot of money to start. Time. So if investing is this straightforward, why don't more people do it? There's a term in behavioral economics, loss aversion. It was studied extensively by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. What they found is this: the pain of losing $100 feels almost twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining $100. We are wired, biologically, to feel losses more intensely than gains. So when the market drops 15% in a month, and it will at some point, that feeling of "I'm losing money" triggers something close to panic. And panic makes people sell. They buy high when the mood is optimistic, they sell low when fear sets in, and then they lock in their losses and swear off the market forever. This cycle, buy high, sell low, quit, is how most retail investors underperform even a basic savings account. Not because the market failed them, because their psychology did. The solution isn't to have no emotions. You're human, you'll feel things. The solution is to remove the decision. Set it up, automate it, and then, as much as possible, leave it alone.
Let me introduce you to Daniel. Daniel is 31. He lives in Manchester, UK. He's not wealthy. He earns around £2,400 a month after tax. Rent is £950. Bills, transport, groceries, £700. He sets aside £200 for fun. Genuinely, he doesn't feel guilty about it. And then, every single month, he automatically transfers £300 into an index fund through his stocks and shares ISA. He doesn't check it every day. He doesn't panic when the market falls. He doesn't get excited when it rises. He just lets it run. Daniel started this when he was 25. 6 years in, he has roughly £26,000 invested. Not life-changing yet, but building, quietly, automatically. And here's what Daniel knows that most people don't. He's not trying to beat the market. He is the market. He owns a little bit of hundreds of companies. Every month, he buys more. When the market dips, he actually appreciates it, because his £300 buys more shares than it did before. He doesn't see a falling market as a threat. He sees it as a discount. That shift in thinking, from fear to patience, that's the real education. Now, a practical note, because the tools look different depending on where you live. If you're in the United States, look into a Roth IRA or a regular brokerage account. Platforms like Fidelity or Vanguard offer simple, low-cost index funds. If you're in the United Kingdom, a stocks and shares ISA is one of the most efficient ways to invest. Your gains grow tax-free. If you're in the Philippines, a TFSA, tax-free savings account, works similarly. Inside it, you can hold ETFs and index funds. If you're in Europe, ETFs through platforms available in your country that follow UCITS regulation are generally the most straightforward, tax-efficient option. The specific platform matters less than the habit. Start simple, stay consistent, and learn as you go. Here's what I want you to walk away with today. The stock market is not a casino. It's not a place for people with insider knowledge. It's not reserved for the wealthy. It is, at its simplest, a way to own a small piece of human economic progress. And historically, that progress has continued. Not without bumps, not without fear, not without years when the numbers go red, but over time, over real, patient, boring time, the direction has been upward. Priya doesn't need to know everything before she starts. Daniel didn't either. You don't. You need to understand one or two basic products. Invest an amount you won't desperately need in the next 5 years. Automate it so your emotions don't interfere, and give it time. The market rewards patience above everything else. Not brilliance, not timing, not luck. Patience. If this video gave you one moment of clarity, one thought that made the stock market feel a little less like a foreign language, then it did its job. If you want more of this, the calm kind, the no-nonsense kind, you know what to do, and I'll see you in the next one.